Small businessman and progressive Democrat Jason Ritchie says Reichert's a little bit too conservative for the district. And Jason Ritchie wants a shot at changing things in Washington, changing things in Washington's 8th District. He joins me in studio now. I appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Is Reichert too conservative for the district?
I believe he's become that way. I think that he's changed over time. I think the redrawn 8th District, that includes the east side of the state, the Wenatchee-Ellensburg, has caused him to become more conservative and to be more in line with those, less than moderate values.
But doesn't that mean the district is a little bit more conservative than it was due to the redistricting?
I don't think so. I think that if you look at a map, a detailed map, Wenatchee, Ellensburg, Chelan, Cle Elum, it's roughly 50-50. It's a purple district. It's drawn to be purple. Obama won the 8th District in the newly drawn 8th. So I don't think, my view of it is that shutting down the government and doing these relatively conservative things doesn't represent the moderate part, the purple district that the 8th is meant to be.
So what went wrong in the primary? Why did you only pull in 29% of the vote?
That's a good question. And we made over 200,000 phone calls. A lot of it's name recognition, and that's really what we're trying to fight against. And I think there's a certain amount of, people know Reichert and they know his name.
They know him to be a Republican.
Yeah, they do, definitely. And I think that to a certain extent, what we've tried to do is to fight that name. Who's running? Jason Ritchie's running. Who is this guy? He runs a small business. It's been a lot of that, getting the name out there. When we are able to get to that persuasion and talk to people about the issues, people are really surprised at some of the votes Reichert's taken. It is drawn to be a conservative, liberal split district. So the Democratic turnout in the primary for all Democrats across the state, actually, in the state Senate races as well, not very good. Historically low turnout overall, 28%.
Yeah, it was a very low turnout election, as primaries tend to be, especially in non-major election cycles, and this is one of them. If the district is more moderate, don't you run the exact same risk into the same problem that you say Reichert is? He's too conservative, but arguably, are you too progressive?
I don't think I am. I would say
you're not a moderate, though. Would you acknowledge that you label yourself a progressive?
I do. I'm a progressive in that I believe government has a role to play. I can speak to that. I view myself as a moderate because I don't put politics in a separate shell, a separate area from life. It's part of what we're dealing with. I think a very conservative person would say government should disappear. I think a very, very hardcore progressive would say it should be central in our lives. As a moderate, as a small business owner, as I view myself, there's a relationship there. I work with the Small Business Administration to go get loans for some of the construction projects that we work on every day. I'm grateful that the SBA is there because the commercial banking market that I deal with, they want collateral, they want loan guarantees. When you're dealing with small business construction like mine, you can't go and get collateral. You have to be able to have something like a Small Business Administration. I value that. That really helps my business. So I view myself as a moderate because I know there's a relationship between private entities like mine, my little business, and the government. And there should be that relationship working together. So that's why I classify myself as a moderate. And a progressive, I'm very progressive on a lot of issues, definitely.
Well, let's talk about some of the issues, both social but also international, because obviously last night the president came out, he gave a speech detailing his ISIS strategy.
Yes.
He wants to degrade and destroy ISIS. He called them a cancer. It was a very aggressively toned and written speech. His plan is to, at least part of the plan, is to arm and train Syrian rebels. How would you respond to that if you were in Congress? Would you don't give him the money to do that?
Yes, I would, with the understanding that Congress has a role to play in that. The commander-in-chief, in my role, as I understand the role, laid out a very comprehensive plan to combat this terrorist organization. It was needed. We needed a plan. We've got a plan. Politically, I think it's a dangerous time for people to be making stands on these issues, coming up to the midterms. And I think who we arm and how we arm them is the sausage making, if you will, the thing people don't want to talk about. But I support it, definitely.
So you support the overall idea of going in there, not necessarily troops on the ground with a combat role.
I oppose combat troops in Iraq and Iraq and Syria both. I don't think our troops should be there. I think the plan to degrade them from the air, put together a coalition of friendly forces based mostly in Saudi Arabia, maybe Turkey if we can pull it off, and hopefully get a government that's up and running now in Iraq to go after these people on the ground. I do not support American ground forces there. I don't believe the borders as they're drawn right now between Syria and Iraq, they are completely fluid. There is no real border there. There is no functioning government in Syria that we can negotiate with. In northern Iraq, where the Kurds are based, I don't see that line as anything but arbitrary right now. So I think we need to go where they are and take them out before they do become a threat to Germany and the UK and Turkey. That's going to change their minds pretty quickly. We can't let that happen.
And you think you can do that without any boots on the ground in a combat role?
That's the plan right now. I think we need to start that way. There is no support, again, for our nationwide in America for another war in the Middle East. It's protracted. It's expensive. I think we have the technology now to take this group out at a distance and have troops on the ground from Turkey, hopefully, if we can get Secretary Kerry to do some negotiating there.
Talking with Jason Ritchie, he is running for Congress. He's running against Dave Reichert, the Republican who currently represents Washington's 8th District. Let's talk a little bit about immigration. It's obviously a topic that a lot of people are discussing, especially this week. In the last week, we've learned that the president is punting on this particular issue from an executive action standpoint until after the election. And the reason was political. Everyone seems to agree with that. There are vulnerable Democrats who don't want to have to deal with this particular topic. Was that the right move?
No.
Tell me why.
Disappointing. The immigration, well, the ICE, it used to be INS, but that's an executive function. There's a lot that a president can do to move that ball forward when there is no room for any compromise with a very conservative Congress. They don't want to bring this up, and I think that's disappointing. I support comprehensive immigration reform 100%. It's the right thing for unions. It's the right thing for the orchardists in Wenatchee and Kashmir. We need comprehensive immigration reform in the state for H-1B visas, the tech companies, H-2A visas. This is essential to our trade-dependent state. However, the president had an opportunity to move forward on it, and I think he made a mistake by letting politics get in the way. As I understand it, H.R. 15, which is the House version of Senate Bill 744, the bill that passed over a year ago for comprehensive immigration reform, has good and bad things for both sides in it. It has border security, it has E-Verify, it has path to citizenship, it has some, but not all, the H-2A and H-1B visas that we need. It's by no means a perfect bill, but breaking it apart allows people on the conservative side to say no path to citizenship, but yes to walls, and allows the more progressive people or liberals to say no more security, we're good there, we need more path to citizenship. And I think that comprehensive approach, while it's not perfect, it's what we were supposed to do as a government. We're supposed to come together and have everyone have something to gain and compromise and move it forward. What
don't you like in the bill?
The visas. I think that hurts our district. I think we need more H-2A agricultural visas, more H-1B visas. And I'm not afraid to stand up and say I support it. I think there's problems with it. I think there's issues with it. I think the path to citizenship's a problem. I've lived in San Diego. The border is not porous. There's a double wall that goes way out into the desert. It is a thing you can see for miles. It is not a porous. Now, are there problems? I mean, are there issues? Yes, but to say that we need more security is what we need are more immigration judges to help deal with the refugees, the kids down there on the border. And that's part of that bill, that H.R. 15. That's not passing. The kids are coming in. We have a 2-year wait. That's real because we don't have the judges there. The process has gotten gummed up because of politics.
Talking with Jason Ritchie, he is running for Congress. He hopes to get your support for Washington's 8th District. When we come back, we're going to talk about guns, and we're going to talk about campaign finance reform in 4 minutes on The Jason Rantz Show. Welcome back to The Jason Rantz Show. I'm joined in studio by Jason Ritchie. He is a progressive Democrat. He is hoping to unseat Republican Congressman Dave Reichert in Washington's 8th. It's going to be, I think you admit, extremely tough to actually do that, given both the incumbency, the benefits that come along with that, the name recognition, and the fact that, look, so far he's pulled 63% of the vote. What do you think is going to be that issue that pulls people into your camp?
A recognition of how far right Dave Reichert has gone in the past 10 years. And some of the things that I think need to be attributed to him because he's voted for them. He voted against equal pay for equal work for women, against Lilly Ledbetter, that law that establishes equal pay for equal work. He won't sign on to comprehensive immigration reform. There are some very specific things about job creation. He's not
Why? Why hasn't he voted for those? Because the implication always, especially when we're talking about Lilly Ledbetter or even immigration, the implication seems to be, well, they're the party against women and they're the party against immigration reform because they don't like Latinos and they don't think that Latinos are good for the Republican Party because they're likely to vote for Democrats. Is that what you believe? Do you think Dave Reichert just doesn't care about women's issues, or is it a little bit more complex than that?
I wouldn't say it's more complex, but I don't believe. I'm sure he's a good guy. I'm sure at some point we'll sit down and have a beer, and that's the thing. It's not personal; it's business. But to a certain extent, I don't want to try to understand where he's at because I don't know what he's thinking. I think, from my view, I think that there's a certain political reality that overwhelms these guys when they get into this office or any position like this elected office. And when they've been there for that long and they start sitting down with political action committees and special interests and all this money becomes the issue. You spend 80% of your time, apparently, fundraising and not thinking about the issue. So I can't think of a good reason why Dave Reichert in this district would not support publicly and sign on to the discharge petition and move comprehensive immigration reform. He could be the leader on this issue, and he's not. Same thing with Lilly Ledbetter. I can't think of a good reason why such a common sense thing doesn't move forward. Is it anti-business? No, I've run a business. I have women that work with me every day that it's so clear, it's so obvious. We're still talking about equal pay. And it's just the social issues that I think people don't know about Dave. His environmental record has gone down from the legal conservation voters. There's a lot of issues that people are just not aware of. And our job as the opposition here is to bring up his voting record and talk about these issues so people know who they're voting for. And it's 10 years of he hasn't passed a bill in 10 years.
You posted on your Facebook page for the campaign that you and he don't see eye to eye on anything. I thought that was a little hyperbolic. There's nothing you see eye to eye with him on?
The only thing I can think of, I'm a fan of soccer, and I know he is as well socially. I would say that as far as social or political issues, I'm disappointed. I really am in terms of his lack of leadership. I think he's become more partisan than moderate, more D.C. than Washington State, and that's not my thing. I believe in term limits. I believe in getting new blood in there. I believe in bringing in new ideas. And it's like sailing. You tack to the right for a while, you tack to the left for a while. You go back and forth. But I'm in terms of the one issue that would, to disagree with my website, would be some of the environmental issues, the alpine wilderness things that he's tried to move forward on, and the Mountains to Sound Greenway. I'm in favor of those, but those are established environmental areas, and I support those things, as does he, as does every other member of both caucuses in this state,
he supported the Violence Against Women Act, the
Yes.
reauthorization. He supported the Children's Health Insurance Program reauthorization and expansion. So there are at least things that we can agree on that you both actually do support. It's not necessarily that you're polar opposites on every single issue.
I would not say we're polar opposites on any issue, but I will point out one that I can point to directly, and that is warrantless wiretapping. Congressman Reichert believes that the Homeland Security Patriot Act, is whatever you want to call it now, allows warrantless wiretapping on American citizens, and he thinks a judge shouldn't be needed to have that type of search, that warrantless search happen. I'm opposed to that 100%. There's no reason why the Fourth Amendment needs to be let go of. I'm a strong believer in the Constitution. We need to have warrants for searches for American citizens. There's no reason he, by any means, should just take the Constitution and set it aside.
Let's talk about guns. That's obviously something that comes up a lot, and clearly 594, 591 have nothing to do with you in a congressional race, but the issues are always there. Mm-hmm. What is your stance? I know you carry a firearm, or at least you're registered to carry a firearm.
Carry, no. I own a gun. Yeah, okay. I don't have a CCW. I own a gun at home, and I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe it applies to the individual right to own and bear arms. Having said that, I believe in a common sense approach to any type of solution like this, any type of social issue like this, and I think that, at least as I view it, what 594 is trying to do is apply some common sense regulations that are applied in other places, like when you go to a federal firearms dealer and you buy a gun like I did, to other situations like Craigslist or a gun show. Not family, brother and sister, mom and dad gives you a gun. That's not part of 594. That doesn't affect that. But it's applying the law across the board. That is a good thing. the less people we have with criminal records, I think it's like 18,000. I'll have to figure it out. But there's a huge number of people that have applied for guns in this state that have been found to be felons and not to be eligible to be able to buy a gun because of background checks. Let's apply that across the board. I think it's reasonable. I support it. I think that it's needed. And I'm frankly, whether or not it's a congressional issue or not, it's something important in the state of Washington.
Well, universal background check is a federal issue, right? I mean, that's something that...
But it's not universal.
No. You know. But the issue is of universal, and that's something that's obviously come up. So do you support just a standard universal background check across the board for every single state?
I do, but right now we're not there politically. I think in Washington State, 594 is the issue right now, and I think as somebody running for office in Washington State, I think it's important to take a stand. I'll be voting for it. I think it's important as a gun owner. But do I support it nationwide? I think it's a good idea. I mean, I think we're 50 separate states. I think the issues that we're going to deal with, and I mean, you have people bringing guns into Chicago, and it's just a very different environment there than it is here. So I would need to see what that legislation would look like at a federal level.
It's interesting because you're also someone who wants to get big money out of political campaigns. How do you reconcile the fact that, like 594 specifically, getting a ton of big money, and it's getting that big money from a few 1%ers, the quote-unquote 1%. You're getting money from Steve Ballmer. We're getting money from Bill and Melinda Gates. I mean, we're talking about a lot of money. Should that have been allowed?
Yes. I actually received a B rating, B as in boy, rating from the NRA, so I'm a supporter of theirs. I get where they're coming from, and I think that their voice is an important voice in defending firearms rights. Having said that, I think that we live in a time where money is speech, and I think that is wrong overall. I think that it's hard for me to say to some wealthy person, your money shouldn't count. It's also hard for me to say to some local or federal organization like the NRA that you shouldn't have a voice either, and your members shouldn't have a voice. But what about everybody else that has to not have a voice at that lower level, at the middle class John Doe level, that's just hearing these people going back and forth thinking, man, it gets drowned out. How do we find that balance? And that's why I supported repealing Citizens United and the bill today in the Senate. I think that that's a tragedy. We need to debate these issues at the federal level and how they apply to initiatives. It's going to be interesting. I think there's too much money in politics for sure.
Jason Ritchie is running for the congressional seat that's currently being held by Dave Reichert. It's Washington's 8th. If you want more information, check out our Facebook page. We're going to link to the Jason Ritchie campaign. I appreciate you stopping by.
Thank you very much.
You're listening to the Jason Rantz Show. We're back at the top of the hour after CBS News on KIRO Radio.